This video will have a total of 5 crime cases, all of which are fairly recent. I'm going to start with the case of Kamarine Saulsberry, which took place in Florida in 2018. You see, his parents had been arrested in the death of the 1-year-old. He had extensive injuries, including a broken back. Wow, a broken back. What the hell? He also had a collapsed lung and a brain injury so severe that the child, he had cerebral fluid leaking from his ears. There was fluid and blood coming out. I've never heard that before, of actual brain fluid coming out of his ears. What the hell happened to him? You see, his father, Kamarine Saulsberry, he was 31 years old. He was arrested. He was charged with second-degree homicide and child neglect, causing great bodily harm or death. The baby's mother, Brianna Scott, she was aged 24. She was also charged with child neglect. She was also charged for causing great bodily harm and was booked into jail with a $2 million bond. And before I continue, I'm about to receive their police interview videos, so stay tuned for that. I'll post it on my interrogations channel. I'll let you guys know when I do it. So Kamarine himself died on December the 29th, 2018. And on that same day, emergency medical services personnel responded to their house, which was on 500 East Fairfield Drive, after Kamarine, the father, called 911 and reported that his son had stopped moving. So by the time the ambulance arrived, the boy was unresponsive. The child was transported to the hospital and pronounced deceased. Authorities observed several injuries on his body, including blisters, abrasions on his chin, forehead, face, and around both ears. There was a blood blister on one of his thumbs and scratches and scars on his torso, abdomen, and back. An autopsy later revealed the boy also suffered from a ruptured liver, a broken back, a broken right arm. There was damage to his diaphragm on the left and right side and bruising all over his body. He also had to both sides of his face. What didn't happen to this boy, right? Broken bones, injured organs. If you were to put all the true crime cases together of everything you heard, it seems like everything happened to this boy. What? It was reported by police that around Christmas 2018, this is when parents began to notice the boy's poor health. And they are accused of child neglect because they did not seek medical help for another 4 days and decided instead to give him home remedies. Now, the first time medical professionals were contacted about the boy's declining health was the day that he was found unresponsive. But the father, Kamarine, later told authorities he first noticed a large, round injury in the center of his son's forehead and several marks on his neck and one mark near his son's belly button on Christmas 2018. Throughout that day, he began to notice that his son began to eat less and less. He was whining in pain, and his breathing appeared irregular and labored. After the Christmas dinner, that's when the fluid started to leak from the boy's left ear. The parents who observed this initially gave the child earache medication, but it didn't work. Their next step was attempting to treat the cerebral air fluid with a sock full of rice heated in the microwave. Bro, what? He's got fluid, blood coming out of his ears, and you're putting a sock in there? The fuck is wrong with you? So on December the 27th, 2018, the boy began to limp whenever he walked and consistently slumped whenever seated. He had heavy and labored breathing, and there were marks observed on his throat. When his stomach was rubbed to try and comfort him, he whined as if the human touch hurt his belly. It was also reported that before the ambulance came to the house, he was seen drinking fluid very fast because he was very thirsty. He was also observed pulling his hair out of his right side of his head. It was not immediately clear why it took more than 2 years to make an arrest in this case, but in a press release announcing the arrests of Brianna and Kamarine, the police chief praised his detectives for their tireless work on the case. Praise? Praise? You're having a laugh, mate. You got a child who's bleeding from his ears and every other conceivable injury, and it took you 2 years to do anything about it. I mean, this police chief, his name is Kevin Christman, he had the audacity to say, I am heartbroken over the loss of his child. Bitch, are you really? At the same time, he says, I am proud of the way that we were able to bring this victim to justice. And he went on to say how the police department is always committed to solving horrible crimes, blah, 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 blah. You coward. So that case is currently ongoing. The trial is still ongoing. And as I said, I should get the police interview in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and I'll be posting it so you can hear from the horses' mouths themselves on what actually happened. Now I'm going to move on to the story of Martina Madarova. This took place in the United Kingdom in 2021. You see, she put on cartoons for her daughter, Elijah Thomas. But then she carried out the heinous incident, and as she was doing what she's about to do, Elijah looked at her mom. Martina proceeded to throttle Elijah before tucking her in with a blanket at their home in West London. Martina, who was 41, had been suffering with her mental health and turned to alcohol during the COVID lockdown and had been in a dark place the night before her daughter's tragic death. But how long do you think she was sentenced for? This silly cow was given a 5-year jail sentence after a judge ruled she had low responsibility after Elijah's death. You see, the court heard that in the months leading up to the incident, family members and friends became concerned for Martina's well-being as she appeared to be increasingly stressed. She was concerned for her income after her hours at her job had been reduced and had become anxious after missing the deadline to enroll Elijah into school. She had other concerns about her mother contracting COVID and being stuck in her apartment all day. She had eventually begun turning to alcohol as a coping mechanism. Now, the prosecutor, Duncan Atkinson, he revealed that Elijah's father, his name was David Thompson, the week before she died, he took 4 days off to help sort out the school situation and to help calm Martina down because during that period she was not being herself. David was asking her to get herself checked into a GP as she seemed depressed. He said she was putting a lot of pressure on herself. During their discussions about things, she would start crying and just walk off into another room. So, on September 14, when the incident took place, Elijah's father had left early for work and was notified a few hours later from a phone call from Martina that their daughter was dead. Due to his distance from the family home, he called his brother and a family friend who rushed to the scene. There, they found Elijah tucked into a blanket as if to go to sleep, but she had no pulse and was cold when they touched her. Emergency services were called at 12:56 p.m., but by that time, Elijah was already dead. It was revealed in court that Martina had drunk 2 bottles of wine and told the family friends, "She's not there anymore. I've done it. I failed my daughter." When she was in the ambulance, she kept saying, "My daughter, what have I done? My daughter, I took her life. She was the most beautiful thing." Elijah's last moments were then revealed after Martina told paramedics that her daughter kept telling her, "Mummy, don't do it. Mummy, don't do it." And this is when Martina, in response, said, "I don't want to do it. I just want to help you. You're safe." Even police, when they were in the custody of Martina, described her as distressed. And when questioned if she heard voices in her head, she said what she had done is not normal, and she knew it's going to be all over the news. She claimed the voices in her head told her to do it and that she deserved the death sentence. She said, "It's rare when a mother suffocates her own child. I'm a murderer at the end of the day." When she spoke to a psychiatrist about her version of events, she said, "I know I took my daughter from the bedroom to the living room. I put on cartoons for her. She was finding me crying. I was with her for a while. It was very embarrassing. My daughter seeing me cry. That's when I felt like a failure. I was an emotional and physical, spiritual mess. So, Martina was charged with her daughter's murder, and in a hearing on December the 7th, 2022, she pled guilty to manslaughter by reason of diminished responsibility. David Thomas, who is the father of the victim, he said that this had a devastating impact on his entire family. He won't ever get over it. He was very proud of her. She would have been an athlete. He said, "I'll miss everything about her. I'll miss watching her sleep and giving her a hug." However, when he spoke of Martina, he said, "I have no malice towards her." He did say she was the best mom who did not do this intentionally. He claimed she is the most innocent person you could meet. He said about Martina that she sees the good in everyone and everything. Martina would do anything for me and for her. He said she did not like violence and would not allow Elijah to watch violent TV shows or films. He said, "I don't have a bad word to say against her. I know she is remorseful." The judge himself noted that prior to the incident, Martina had been an exemplary mother and that there was no evidence of her mistreating Elijah at any point before the incident. But he did tell her that she ignored multiple warnings from her friends and her family to go and seek medical advice rather than turning to alcohol. This is why he labeled it a case of low responsibility. He said there are understandable reasons why someone in your condition might not seek the help that they need. And he also acknowledged her genuine remorse. But he did say she has to live with what she has done. Regarding the victim herself, the autopsy revealed that she died from a compression of the neck. So as I said, Martina was sentenced to only 5 years. Personally, I find that quite scandalous. However, we all know how rigorous the insane defense process is. I mean, 99.9% of those who claim insanity get told, no, you are sane. So if the husband supported her, right, she took his daughter's life, but he still supported Martina. And if the judge said that, yes, she was mentally disturbed, then as crazy as 5 years sound, I mean, what else can you do, right? Now, I'm going to move on to the case of Miya Rudd. In the United States, this took place in 2023. So her parents and her grandparents were blamed for her being missing. They were arrested as eventually Kentucky police found the girl. She was dead and she was only 8 months old. You see, Miya was reported missing after state troopers carried out a welfare check at her parents' home in Ohio County, and the infant was nowhere to be found. The baby had not been seen by her family since the end of April. But eventually, authorities said they found the remains of Miya inside their home. But you know what's insane? So Miya was born in October 2023, yeah? Her umbilical cord tested positive for meth. Bro, what? What the fuck? Now, the police say that the child, Miya, was last suspected to be in the care of her mother, Tesla Tucker, and the father, Cage Rudd. Yes, the mother's name is Tesla. She's 29, which means she was born in the early 90s. So no, she was named after Nikola Tesla, not Elon. So the parents and the grandparents of the baby were all arrested. Miya's parents were arrested on allegations of child abandonment and drug charges after police found them in a room with drugs. This included fentanyl and methamphetamine. Her grandparents, Ricky and Billy, as well as another man, Timothy, were also arrested in connection to the investigation. They were all arrested on June the 6th, 2024. The Kentucky State Police trooper said that the parents were caught in possession of a large quantity of drugs and had no information about the kids' whereabouts. He added that they were not being very cooperative with the investigation. Now, the investigators believed that they had been using the home as a base for drug trafficking. In fact, when the police went to the home of Billy, the grandmother, she was arrested because they realized she had an outstanding warrant from October 2023. She had been charged with second-degree domestic violence assault. And with all of this, the Kentucky State Police removed Miya's 3 older siblings from the parents' home. And it was with the help of a cadaver dog that the police spent several hours searching across many woods for the missing girl before they eventually found her remains. We don't know yet how she died. We don't know yet what kind of condition her body was in, as this case is still ongoing. I think because these idiots were smacked out of the head most of the time, I think the baby died of starvation. Now I have the case of Alfie Steele. This is from the United Kingdom. He died in February 2021. You see, he was in his mother's house. Her name was Carla Scott. This took place in Worcestershire. He suffered sadistic punishments, including assaults and being held under bath water. During the trial, they heard that he was locked out of the house or in a shed, where he would be forced to stand still by his mother Carla and her lover Dirk. You see, the jurors, they were told that neighbors and even passers-by in the street reported the treatment carried out by Dirk. He was 41, Carla was 35. 6 months before Alfie died, a neighbor made a harrowing 999 call, reporting loud sounds coming from the bathroom like they are really the child. Alfie himself died after being found unresponsive in bath water, while Carla claimed he had fallen asleep while bathing. Carla was asked by social services to supervise the contact between Alfie and Dirk, but it was reported she didn't even sort out proper meals for Alfie. In fact, social workers were warned about Dirk's criminal past before Alfie's tragic death. Apparently, they responded by saying, yeah, don't worry, we're looking into it. Well, clearly you didn't. So now I'm going to go through a date timeline of everything that happened to Alfie. So in 2018, Carla and Alfie moved to Worcestershire. Alfie was subject to a child protection plan for neglect, and he and his mother were homeless. In August 2019, Dirk meets Carla. There are concerns from family and neighbors about his criminal history, about his aggression, and his cannabis use. In September 2019, social workers took a look at his history, also his drug dealing, and discussed what they're going to do going forward. Because of course, if you have a child and you are seeing social workers as a mother, if you're going to go and date a man, they kind of need to approve him in a sense. And at that time, Dirk was under investigation for a burglary of an elderly man where firearms were stolen. Carla herself said she did not believe Alfie was at risk. So in October 2019, a child protection and safety plan was agreed. In November 2019, neighbors share concerns that Dirk is behaving cruelly to Alfie. In February of 2020, this is now around the time of lockdown and COVID, neighbors raised concerns about antisocial behavior by Carla and Dirk in the form of parties and loud music. They were also concerned about the way he responded, as he basically told all the neighbors F off. And around this time, before lockdown happened, Alfie was reported to be hungry in school. In March 2020, Carla acted physically to Alfie, and there is evidence of Dirk being drunk and aggressive. And then a few weeks later is when he actually had the confirmed lockdown. So because of this, there was changes to operating procedures. The schools remain open to support vulnerable children, but Carla did not allow Alfie to attend. In April 2020, there was further concerns from neighbors about Alfie and Dirk seen behaving inappropriately and aggressively to him. In May 2020, there was a planning meeting held, at which it was decided that a risk assessment would be completed for Dirk. Because of all these reports, they were like, okay, finally we'll look into it. In June 2020, Dirk was caught shoplifting on 2 occasions. This bastard's a real piece of work, huh? In July 2020, at a meeting, it was agreed the threshold for care proceedings was not met in regards to Dirk. A child protection plan would continue, but Dirk would not be allowed in the home. And he was also required to engage with a child protection plan and attend meetings and anger management. In August 2020, a neighbor shares concern with police that they can hear a child being harmed. Carla denied this. In September 2020, Alfie returned to school, and there were concerns about him being hungry and unkempt. In October 2020, Dirk was convicted of physically assaulting a train guard. In November 2020, the school was also worried as Alfie had a nasty ear infection and seemed unsettled. Those fears were discussed with the lead social worker. The social workers also believed that Carla and Dirk might be dealing drugs from the home. In January of 2021, there was a change of social worker and the child protection plan is reviewed. But in February, Alfie was murdered. He died after his head was repeatedly held underwater in a bath. When they found him, he was left with more than 50 injuries. And at this sentencing hearing, Dirk was jailed for life with a minimum term of 32 years. Carla was sentenced to 27 years with a minimum term of 17. You classless bastards. My last case is a child minder. Her name is Karen Foster. Again, this is from the UK. Now she took the life of a 9-month-old baby by shooting him to death. Karen herself was sentenced to 12 years and 7 months in prison for manslaughter. You see, she was 62. She had been due to stand trial at the court for murdering Harlow Collins. She pled guilty to a lesser charge of manslaughter before the jury was sworn in. The prosecution accepted her manslaughter plea. See, Harlow was described as a healthy and happy boy. Harlow was in the care of Karen Foster. She was a registered childminder with 9 years experience, but he sustained traumatic injuries resulting in his death. Now, the prosecution had a theory. They believed Karen snapped because she was not coping with the demands of caring for 4 children. She lost her temper, and Harlow was on the receiving end. She shook the child so strongly it caused devastating injuries. His death was caused in the course of an assault. In a victim impact statement read to the court, Harlow's mother, Gemma, wrote that he was a happy, smiley baby whose giggle was infectious, but that she was struggling to remember even the good times with Harlow since his life was taken. She said, "How do I explain losing my son in such horrific circumstances?" Harlow was enjoying his life. He was happy and smiling. The court heard how emergency services were called to the address, and Karen reported Harlow was not breathing. The boy was then taken to a hospital, where scans showed he had significant injuries to his brain. Karen was arrested at the hospital on suspicion of grievous bodily harm. She was then charged with murder after a post-mortem examination showed Harlow, who died 4 days later in hospital, sustained a traumatic brain injury. The basis of the manslaughter plea was that Karen had shaken Harlow in frustration after he toppled out of his high chair and began to cry. This is when she panicked and didn't know what to do, because she realized he was seriously injured. It was also revealed that Karen had lied to Ofsted about her personal circumstances and health, that she had been caring for more children than her registration permitted. She had told parents she was a qualified nurse when that was not true. And as I mentioned, she was sentenced to 12 years. So, a quick recap on these cases. The first case, Brianna and Quadaris, I think we can all agree they should never be allowed to see daylight ever again, right? Case number 2, Martina Madarova, again, 5 years for essentially suffocating her daughter to death. I'm just going to take that on face value with what the judge decided and her history of mental illness. In terms of Miya Rudd, all those drug addicts, the fact that she was found with meth in her system when she was born, I mean, what do you think was going to happen to this child? I say death penalty to all of them. Alfie Steele, the torture he endured at the hand of Dirk, I say death penalty to him too. And in the case of Karen, 12 years, I don't think there was malicious intent. But what the hell are you doing caring for more babies than you can handle? 12 years to me seems about right. Comment, tell me what you think.